Matt, thank you for having us. So if you would just kind of give us a little background, introduce yourself, give us some background on your story, what brought you here, how did you end up at Rockrose Development, how do you partner with Junior Achievement, how all of those tie in together. Just kind of share some of your backstory with us.
You bet. So I'm actually a Caprock grad way back in 1981, and I was introduced to Junior Achievement about 8 years ago, and I partnered with a teacher at Caprock by the name of Johnny Price, and her and I have been partnering to do Junior Achievement classes all those years, every semester, and I'm really excited to get to try to have some sort of a form of Junior Achievement instruction through the videos. And I just want to tell you a little bit about where I came from and what my journey was. I was at Caprock, of course, and at that time it was highly unlikely that I was going to go to college. We didn't have the money for those sort of things, and I was the only family member that had ever gone to college. And so I just want to encourage everyone that's listening that you can do it. I worked hard through college. I took several years to get all the way through, but I finally made it, working nights and weekends to try to pay for my tuition. While I was at Caprock, I grew a strong passion for architecture. And that architecture class and that architecture teacher by the name of Jess Roan is what kind of set my career in motion. As a result of that love for architecture, I proceeded to work a variety of different jobs that were related to that. And I drew house plans, and I worked construction, and I was a planner for the city. And eventually I had an opportunity to partner with a family and get into the real estate development business. And so our company, Rockrose Development, we develop neighborhoods, and we've been doing that for about 26 years now. And the land development business, what's really interesting about it is there are so many career opportunities in that one category. So within our company, we have marketing, we have sales, we have engineering, we have accounting, we have finance, we have architecture and design, we have construction. So it's an incredible, varied type of a career path, and it's something that I'm very happy to be a part of.
So why do you do what you do?
You know, I love doing what I do, and this might sound a little cheesy, but that's okay. I truly believe that home ownership is an American dream. But more importantly, we pride ourselves in creating quality neighborhoods because think about it, you know, the neighborhood or the house that you grow up in, that's where all your memories are. So our hope is to create the best possible environment for families to create long-lasting memories, and that's what gets me up every day, is knowing that we're doing that.
Do you remember the first job you ever had?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I believe I was 13 or 14 years old, and back then the laws and the rules were a little bit more lax, so I was able to get a job in the drive-through window of Jeff's Grandburger, and it wasn't because they needed me or wanted me, it was because I was so persistent, and I just bugged the crap out of the owner until he finally just put me to work just to shut me up. And that was my very first job. In the summer, I think I was probably in the 6th grade or 7th grade. I graduated early at 17, so wherever that put me grade-wise. And while I was working that job, I remember thinking, you know, my brain wasn't developed enough to think, well, what is this going to do for my future? But I will say that that job taught me so much about communication and customer service, dealing with critical thinking, having to figure out how to solve problems, because there were plenty of problems, believe it or not, in a hamburger restaurant. Mm-hmm. And you have to know how to think on your feet and communicate, but it was a lot of fun.
Okay, so you answered, how did you get hired? You were hired because you were persistent and you didn't let them tell you no. No is not an answer.
That's right, and I think that came naturally, but I would encourage you that are listening, I know that it doesn't come naturally for everybody to be persistent, but it is so important to step outside of your comfort zone and to engage with people and look them in the eye and tell them what you'd really like to try and do. And adults listen, believe it or not, a lot of adults do listen, and if you're speaking and you're motivated, that will resonate with it.
Absolutely. So do you remember any takeaways from your first job, positive or negative, or both?
Sure. Well, like I said, I got to learn a lot about communication. I didn't understand it at the time, what I was learning, but looking back on it, I figured it out. I learned that you need to be dependable, because I'm sure that at 14 years old, my brain wasn't developed to the point where I would wake up in the morning and think, I can't be late. But you learn pretty quick when they say, dude, if you're not going to show up on time, we don't need you. And it didn't take but one time for that to happen. The other thing I learned was taking initiative and looking and sort of try and understand and plan for and anticipate what it is that's needed in any job. So you might be hired to do one particular job, but let me tell you, your boss is going to be watching for the other things that you do. You're expected to do what you're hired to do. You're not expected to do the extra stuff. And so that's one thing I learned, is I would just observe and watch what other people were doing, and then I would go do it for them when they were busy. And that went a long way towards my next job and my next job after that.
Did you have any career interests in middle school or high school?
Sure. In middle school, I was certain that I was going to be an NFL quarterback. So I was highly motivated to become an NFL quarterback until my first day at practice at Fannin Junior High, because it was a junior high back then. And I realized I wasn't even one of the best in the city, much less one of the best in the nation. So my quarterback aspirations quickly disappeared. But then as I moved into high school and had a little bit more maturity and a little bit more humbleness, I started focusing on things that I could excel at. We're not all designed to be superior athletes. And once I figured that out, I found other interests. And my interest in high school was architecture. And so that architecture passion is what led to everything else in my life.
Oh, that's perfect. So, and it correlates directly to what you do today.
I was so blessed to have Jess Roan as my, not just teacher, but mentor. And so, of course, he had the architecture program. At Caprock at the time, it was one of, if not the best architecture program, high school program in the state of Texas. And it was well known that if you took architecture courses from Jess Roan, you were at a different level. So I was blessed in that way. But I took that teaching from Mr. Roan, and I was able to then understand, because of his mentorship, it's not just about your skill. It's not just about your technical skill. It's also how can you sell yourself? How can you promote yourself to others? How can you take what you're learning and make it valuable to somebody else? Because at the end of the day, this is not about you. It's about what you can do for others. And then the rewards will come back to you once you have that part mastered.
Do you remember what was your very first job in the architecture, engineering, construction field?
So that's, again, the cool thing about this career path is that it's so multifaceted. I think I was 15, maybe 16 when I went to work for a construction company, and we actually were just doing roof jobs. So I was a roofer for a summer. In fact, it was, I believe, in 1981 or 1982, and it was a heat wave. Oh. Much like what we experienced this year. We had about 23 days in a row of over 100 degrees. And I quickly learned while doing that job, this is not what I want to do with the rest of my life. But it was so important and so valuable, because it taught me to understand and appreciate labor and contractors and what they go through and what they have to endure. When I began to take part in other forms of the land development business, one thing is you kind of have to know what others are going through, what it's like to be a builder, what it's like to be a contractor. And that's helped me to relate on a personal level with all of the folks that I do business with.
So, kind of shifting gears a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what your typical work day looks like now.
Typical work day now. So, I've been doing this for so long. It's evolved over time. And so, in this more modern age, I start with, plowing through a couple of hundred emails and trying my best to make sure everyone is answered and communicated with. I teach my staff and encourage them that none of this matters if we don't have relationships. So we pride ourselves on building those relationships, and part of building that relationship is being responsive somebody needs an answer, give them an answer in a reasonable amount of time. Throughout the day, every day is different. Unlike most careers, this is unusual in the sense that no 2 days are the same, almost. So today might be what we're doing right now. And tomorrow might be, I might have meetings at City Hall with city officials, and then I might turn around and have meetings with brokers, and then I might have to go check on a construction project. And then maybe we need to sit down with our marketing team and discuss our strategies of how we're gonna promote a certain neighborhood or a certain idea. So it's a lot of team building, it's a lot of relationship building, and it's extremely varied.
Keeps it interesting.
Very much so.
Awesome. So tell me your favorite part of what you do and your least favorite part of what you do.
That's a good question. I think I would have to say my favorite part, if I was just going to pick one, is that because of what we do, we provide a lot of job opportunities for other folks, especially those that are self-employed. And we take great pride in that. There's a lot of businesses, a lot of individuals, even a lot of companies in this town that are doing what they do because we exist. And so that makes for an incredibly rewarding experience. The things that I guess I would say that are less fun, that I don't like, are when the demands exceed our ability to supply. And when you have to tell your customers, I'm sorry, it might be 6 months before we can provide what you need. Well, they have to go figure out how they're going to make a living. And that's an extremely difficult burden to bear. So we take it very seriously that what we do matters to other people.
If you could tell your 18-year-old self anything, I mean, you're talking to a middle schooler and a high schooler, sir. You know, if they could go back, if you could go back, what would you tell yourself?
You know, I was just having this conversation with some of my coworkers, and it's funny because depending on what age you are now, that's a completely different answer. I'm at 57 years old, and I've learned a lot over the years. And the thing that resonates with me, I think, more than anything, because of my exposure to all of the different classes that I was fortunate enough to help teach with Ms. Price at Caprock, is be bold and be assertive, and don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. And understand that I know when I was 16, 17 years old, I graduated at 17, I underestimated the power that I had over an adult, or the influence that I might have had over an adult, or the fact that my opinion mattered. I used to think, well, I'm too young, I shouldn't even open my mouth, I don't know anything, and I just need to do whatever they tell me and shut up. That's not all bad, but I want to encourage you, be bold. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to promote yourself. And by that I mean, if you have a skill set, there's a difference between being humble and not wanting anybody to think you are a bragger or that you're arrogant, but you also need to share that information. And so if your skill set is videography, then you need to promote yourself and say, look at the great work that I can do for your company, okay? If your skill set is customer service and you're going in for a customer service position, the last thing you want to be is shy and timid. So I need to know, if you're coming to work for me, for example, you know, that I can trust you to be on top of your game, that you can be motivated, that you can step up to the occasion whenever there's a problem to be solved. So again, my 18-year-old self, the big lesson would be just don't be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone. And that takes practice. And you're going to have to do this over and over again. You don't just wake up one day, walk into a job interview, and perfect it. It takes an awful lot of practice. So be inspired to be bold, and also surround yourself with positive people. Because you are going to become ultimately exactly what you surround yourself with. Surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with motivated people. Surround yourself with people of character. You know, it's one thing when you're 10, 11, 12, 14, 15 years old to act a fool and hang out with fools. But when you're getting to the end of your high school career and you're looking for what college you want to go to, you're looking for what career path you want, it suddenly really starts to matter, because guess what? People are paying attention. They're paying attention to your actions. They're paying attention to who you surround yourself with. They're paying attention to your character, your dependability, your honesty. So it's time, if you're not already in that mindset, it's time to start focusing on that side of who you want yourself to be.
So because of what Junior Achievement gets to do in our community, I get to visit with a lot of different employers. And oftentimes I hear them say, oh, I hope you guys are teaching this because we see such a need for it here. So what would you say to these students, middle and high schoolers? What would you say their greatest strength is? Where do they really shine? And where could they improve?
Oh, well, that's a good question. One thing I have figured out over the years of being involved with Caprock students is, you might be surprised by this answer. I truly believe that this generation is overly criticized. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that these stigmas that adults want to place on this generation are by and large inaccurate. Mm-hmm. What I see is a generation full of young people who are passionate, they're all-inclusive, they are non-judgmental, they are really eager to make a difference socially, they're engaged, and people criticize social media, and I understand it has a lot of negatives, but I'm telling you, this generation, to endure the things they have to endure, by, say, being criticized or being scrutinized by friends or peers or others, and then to deal with that on an emotional level is extremely challenging. So I say hats off to this generation for having to go through stuff that none of us can relate to. We have no idea what it was like to be 17 years old and have to be magnified out there with every one of your flaws or every one of your habits or whatever it is that somebody wants to jump on and criticize. We don't know what that's like. So I say it's incredible what this generation is doing. I'm grateful to that. Now, one thing I will say is with that, I think there is a big lack in pushing yourself for public speaking or having conversations with people, with engaging eye to eye in a conversation. It's a little bit more challenging, I think, for this generation, and that will serve you well to practice that, and don't be afraid to open your eyes wide and listen to what the other person is saying and engage in that one-on-one conversation. Because like it or not, you still have to deal with us, and it's easier for us to relate to a student or a young person through eye-to-eye, voice-to-voice communication. And we need to understand that you have what it takes to sort of rise to the next level as you grow and mature.
What is the most important thing you look for when hiring a prospective employee? And I mean, every job is honorable, but from maybe the lowest of position to the highest of position, the most important thing you look for?
Without just trying to go through the standard list of, dependability, honesty, and all that, that's all very important. For me, a lot of it is dependability, though. I tell my kids, I tell students, I tell my employees, if you're on time, you're late. Meaning, attack everything with a passion that it's important to you. Prove to me that you think it's important to you to come to work for me, or whoever it is you're going to work for. Show up early, leave late. Don't be the first one to walk out the door whenever it's time to leave. I'm not saying hang around for an hour, but don't look like you are so eager to walk out of that place of employment that you just are ready to race out the front door. That will reflect on you as, man, I wish you cared more about what we do. Another thing that I look for that is so easy, and back to sort of the technology and the generational thing and what you might have access to that we didn't at your age, there's really no excuse for not knowing a lot about the company that you're going to work for before you ever walk in the door. There's no excuse. You can get online, you can look at LinkedIn, you can look at their websites, you can see all kinds of social media postings. I don't do social media personally, but I'm smart enough to know that we have to have it. So we have a lot of social media exposure. If you were to become interested in our company, you could follow us on Instagram, you can see our Facebook page, you can see our website, and you can learn pretty much all of the basics that there are to know about any company. You can learn who the founders are, you can learn who the key people are, you can learn what it is they do, you can learn maybe what their mission and their vision and their values are. And so when you walk in armed with that information, you're going to set yourself apart from the masses.
What's the biggest piece of advice or two that you would give these students that are hearing you today?
You know, the advice I would give you is somewhat repetitive, and we've kind of covered it, but it's every opportunity you have, take advantage of being able to practice public speaking. I know firsthand that it is the worst thing for most people to want to stand up in front of a group and do any kind of a presentation. I get that. It's extremely hard. You're never going to be good at it if you don't practice. No different than whatever sport you might play, or if you're in band, or if you choose to become a chef. If you don't practice, there's no chance that you're ever going to succeed at it. So you can't walk through life avoiding that. You have to be able to have relationships, you have to be able to have good communication skills, you have to do whatever you can to overcome those fears. Just don't be timid, right? Don't be shy. Understand that your opinions matter. Understand that when you are engaging with an older person, a supervisor or a boss, that if you put some thought into engaging with them, they'll appreciate that you're engaging with them.
So like we were talking about earlier, what we do is we develop neighborhoods. And what we generally have to do before we can ever start selling homes is go find a piece of property. So you can see a piece of property like this is kind of where we start. And we have to go out and look at a whole lot of things. First of all, we have to think about topography, we have to think about location, where it is in relation to the city, we have to think about where do people want to live, we have to think about annexation. There's a whole bunch of stuff we have to think about. More importantly though, is we have to design a neighborhood and we have to build a neighborhood. So in order to do that, one of the many careers that are required to accomplish what it is we accomplish would be civil engineering. Are interested in engineering, it doesn't necessarily have to be civil engineering, right? So there's a lot of things that go along with civil engineering, and one of those things is technical drawing, CAD drawing, or engineering technology. And so a lot of the work that you're about to see that is started by the work of a civil engineer is also supported by the technical staff. And so we happen to have a CAD operator with us. Jeremy, you want to come on over and introduce yourself? Jeremy is also with our company. This is Jeremy Hall. So when did you start working with us, Jeremy?
I started working with Rockrose in 2017, so I've been coming on 3 years.
Good. So what would you say is important for anyone listening to know if they think they might want to get into technical drawing or anything CAD or anything engineering technology? What should they be thinking about right now?
Yeah, I would encourage them to do what Mark said, to find somebody that's kind of in that field, because you have a lot to learn from other people, and just to, I would suggest getting acquainted with AutoCAD softwares, because that's what I use primarily. And so there's all kinds of tutorials. If you're a student, they have all kinds of free trials for free software that you can take advantage of, and I suggest doing that. And as you guys know, you can learn pretty much anything from YouTube, so that's I feel like I need to give credit to YouTube for my degree, because I use that a lot.
And actually, I believe Caprock has CAD classes. So anybody that's listening to this that has that gift set, that has that passion, you're about to see what you can do with that skill set. All right, so we've seen what a pasture looks like, and you've heard what we've talked about in terms of that's where we have to start. So then what we generally do from there is we look at a great big map and we try to figure out and brainstorm what would be a good land plan. So any neighborhood in Amarillo, when you drive around it, you think about curving around streets and trying to find your way to somebody's house, and wow, this was an idiot that designed this neighborhood because I keep getting lost. And so that's all part of land planning. A big piece of land planning also is understanding what that neighborhood is going to need over time. And so the number one thing that's the most important to any neighborhood, besides the homes and the families, is the schools. So we partner with the school districts, both Amarillo and Canyon, and we create very visionary, future-thinking ideas of where these schools need to go and how big they need to be and what is the future planning. So a lot of smart people have to get together and figure out 20 years from now, what is this going to look like? Where are the kids going to go to school? How many of them will there be? We have to think 20 years in advance before we can put the first line on a piece of paper on a raw pasture like this. So for an example, this neighborhood called Pinnacle is starting up, and you can see behind me, you can see some houses, you can see a tennis court. It's part of the Randall High School complex, and of course you can see Randall High School. No booze. It's everybody gets along on this deal. And then as you look back to either direction, you can see there's a lot of space that we still have to fill in. And of course that's where the engineers come into play. Then it gets into a whole bunch of different career choices, right? So you've heard about the engineering, you understand what goes into sort of some land planning, but along with that then comes all kinds of contractors. We need contractors to put the utilities in the ground. What you don't see is millions of dollars worth of pipes and power and fiber optic and everything that you need to make a neighborhood work. You see drainage, you see streets, you see alleys. So all of that is extremely expensive to put together, but more importantly, you need builders to come along. And those builders hire drywall contractors and plumbers and electricians and roofers and concrete contractors and bricklayers and interior designers. They then need insurance policies for their homes. They need banker relationships so that they can get funding for the projects. They have to have title companies that close on the properties. The list goes on and on. So this whole real estate development career path it's not just somebody going out and buying land and converting it. It requires dozens and dozens of careers and companies to make it successful.
You go to build a home, Rockrose doesn't build a home.
Right.
So you get the neighborhood ready for the home builder to come in.
Right.
And then the home builder takes over and hires a real estate agent, and the realtor comes in and sells the homes. Take us all the way through what the finished neighborhood looks like.
So step one, we sell the lots, right, after we've created the neighborhood. And then we also have to create rules, because just like in any business, there needs to be rules. So if you create a neighborhood and you don't have rules, then people who are building their home might not be protected from something that could lower their value going up across the street. So the type of product needs to be similar. So whether we're building an entry-level neighborhood like City View, where it's smaller starter homes, or whether we're building a little bit higher end neighborhood like Pinnacle, there have to be rules that say the houses have to be a certain size, they have to look a certain way. So that involves the architects, that also involves attorneys to set up those rules. The architects then create the plans, then those builders go get those plans, they use those plans to build the homes. And when they're building the homes, like I said, there's 12 or 13 different subcontractor businesses that are involved in that. Not only the realtor, the banker, and the title company, but also all of the building trades that go along with the construction of that home. The realtor then, of course, ultimately finds a buyer for the home, and that's where the story ends, is once that family moves into that home, and that's when they can start building their memories. So we've talked a lot about what all goes into making a neighborhood. We've talked a lot about all the different career choices that there are in a neighborhood. We've talked about what we try to envision when we create a neighborhood. And this is a great example of sort of a finished project. What you saw earlier was the first phase of what is a master plan community that will consist of many phases over many years. What you're looking at here is the first phase of a master plan community that is now finished. And so this is the colonies. This neighborhood consists of about 1,000 homes. It took about 20 years to develop. And you're looking at some of the areas that have park amenities. You can see that some of the houses are more upscale, higher priced homes. That's kind of what the colonies is designed for. And one of the key factors when we create neighborhoods like this, or any neighborhood in Amarillo, in any place across the country, is streets have to drain. And especially as flat as it is out here in the Panhandle, drainage can be an issue. I want to introduce you to Mark Franklin again, our engineer. And I want to talk to Mark a little bit about some of the things that go into planning and constructing a neighborhood. So as you look down this corridor, Mark, these things don't just get laid out by guessing where the street needs to go, carving out the dirt, and laying asphalt. I'm guessing that's how it works, right?
Yes, sir.
So tell me a little bit about what has to go into just something as simple as seeing streets and curbs and gutters.
Well, like you mentioned earlier, the first thing we have to have is a topographic survey from a surveyor, and we have to figure out which direction the land is is wanting the water to go before we put the streets in. And then we generally align the streets with those directions to try to get it to the low spot and to an outfall such as a ply leak.
Right, and to that point, the way this street curves is for a reason. Two reasons. One is aesthetics, so it looks good anytime you have a street that curves. Another reason is that, just like Mark said, the flow naturally follows this contour. And all of this drainage ends up in a drainage channel, which ends up in a lake across Coulter. Every bit of that has to be designed before we can even start the first house. Okay, we want to show you just a little bit more of what the finished product can look like, because that's what really brings our staff joy, is when we go from that raw pasture that you saw before to being able to supply lots for builders so that they can make their living, being able to provide homes for families so that they can start their memories, and then to be able to look at something that's completely finished, like you're about to see some additional footage. That's what really makes these kinds of career choices so very satisfying. Thank you for your time.